Sarah Martinez had always wondered why she looked so different from her parents. While her mother, Elena, had dark hair and olive skin, and her father, Carlos, shared those same Mediterranean features, Sarah stood out with her striking blue eyes and auburn hair. For 28 years, she had brushed off the curious looks from relatives and the occasional comment about her unique appearance. Her parents had always told her she took after her great-grandmother, a story that satisfied her until recently. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Sarah was reviewing contracts at her law firm in downtown Chicago. Her mother's voice was shaky, filled with an emotion Sarah couldn't quite identify. "Sarah, you need to come home immediately. Your father, he's in the hospital." The drive to her childhood home in Riverside took 45 minutes, but it felt like hours. Carlos Martinez had always been the picture of health. At 62, he still played tennis twice a week and had never missed a day of work at his accounting firm. The idea of him lying in a hospital bed seemed impossible. When Sarah arrived at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, she found her mother pacing in the waiting room, her hands twisted together in worry. Elena's usually perfect appearance was disheveled, her makeup smeared from crying. "What happened?" Sarah asked, pulling her mother into a hug. "Heart attack," Elena whispered. "He collapsed at work this morning. The doctors, they're running tests, but they need to know our family medical history. Everything. Sarah, there are things we never told you." Dr. Williams, a tall man with kind eyes, approached them with a clipboard. "Mrs. Martinez, we need to discuss your husband's condition. Is this your daughter?" "Yes, this is Sarah." "Good. We're going to need detailed family medical history from both sides. Heart disease, diabetes, any genetic conditions. Time is critical here." Elena's face went pale. "Doctor, could we speak privately?" Something in her mother's tone made Sarah's stomach clench. "Mom, what's going on?" Dr. Williams looked between them, sensing the tension. "Actually, it might be helpful if we could get a quick blood sample from your daughter as well. Sometimes genetic markers can help us understand hereditary risks." "No." Elena's voice was sharp, almost panicked. "That won't be necessary." Sarah stared at her mother. In all her years, she had never seen Elena react so strongly to something so simple. "Mom, if it can help Dad, of course I'll give blood." "Elena," a weak voice called from the doorway. Carlos was awake, sitting up in his hospital bed with oxygen tubes in his nose. "Tell her." "Carlos, not now. You need to rest." "I almost died today," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I can't carry this secret anymore. Sarah deserves to know." The room fell silent, except for the beeping of medical machines. Sarah felt her world beginning to shift, though she didn't yet understand why. "Know what?" Sarah asked, looking between her parents. Carlos closed his eyes as if gathering courage. "Sit down, mija." Sarah remained standing, her lawyer instincts telling her she needed to be prepared for whatever was coming. "Just tell me." "You're adopted," Elena blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "We found you when you were 3 days old. We've loved you as our own daughter every single day since then, but you're not our biological child." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She sank into the nearest chair, her mind reeling. "What?" "We tried for years to have children," Carlos explained, his voice gentle despite his weakness. "After multiple miscarriages, the doctors told us it wasn't possible. We had given up hope when we got the call about you." "But why didn't you tell me?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Elena sat beside her daughter, reaching for her hand. "We were going to, when you were older. But you fit so perfectly into our lives, into our family. Years passed, and it became harder to find the right moment. Then it seemed like it didn't matter anymore. You were ours." Sarah pulled her hand away, standing up abruptly. It does matter. My entire life is a lie. No, Carlos said firmly. Your life is real. Our love for you is real. The family we built together is real. Dr. Williams cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps I should give you some privacy. Wait, Sarah said, her mind starting to work again. If I'm adopted, then you can't use my genetic information anyway. What about my biological family's medical history? Elena and Carlos exchanged a look that Sarah was beginning to recognize. Another secret. We don't know much about your biological family, Elena said carefully. The adoption was complicated. Complicated how? It was arranged privately, Carlos explained, through a lawyer friend of ours. We were told your birth mother was very young and your father wasn't in the picture. She wanted to give you a better life. Sarah felt anger building in her chest. You don't know anything about my real family's medical history. What if I have genetic conditions? What if I want children someday and need to know about hereditary diseases? We have some basic information, Elena said quickly. Both birth parents were healthy. No known genetic issues. Some basic information isn't enough, Sarah snapped. This is my life, my health, my future. Dr. Williams stepped forward again. If you'd like to pursue genetic testing or try to locate biological family for medical purposes, there are resources available. DNA testing has become quite sophisticated. Elena's face went white. That's not necessary. Like I said, we have the basic medical information. Mom, why are you so against this? Sarah studied her mother's face, seeing fear there. What aren't you telling me? Nothing, Elena said too quickly. I just think it's best not to complicate things when your father is fighting for his life. Carlos was watching his wife with a strange expression. Elena, maybe it's time. Time for what? Sarah demanded. Before anyone could answer, Dr. Williams's pager beeped. I need to check on another patient. But Mr. Martinez, your condition has stabilized. We'll continue monitoring you, but the immediate crisis has passed. After he left, the small hospital room felt suffocating. Sarah looked at her parents, the people she had called Mom and Dad her entire life, and realized she didn't really know them at all. I need some air, she said, moving toward the door. Sarah, wait, Elena called after her. I just need to think. In the hospital corridor, Sarah leaned against the wall, trying to process everything. Adopted. The word kept echoing in her mind. All those times she had wondered about her different appearance, all those family photos where she stood out. It all made sense now. But something else bothered her. Her mother's reaction to DNA testing had been more than just protective concern. It had been fear. What was Elena so afraid of her finding out? Sarah pulled out her phone and did something that, an hour ago, she never would have considered. She searched for DNA testing services. The top result was for Ancestry DNA, promising to connect her with biological relatives and provide detailed ethnic background information. She was about to close the browser when she noticed another link. 23andMe, Health and Ancestry Reports. If her parents couldn't provide her biological family's medical history, maybe science could. Without giving herself time to reconsider, Sarah ordered the test kit and arranged for same-day delivery to her apartment. If her parents wouldn't tell her the truth about her biological family, she would find out herself. What Sarah didn't know was that her simple decision to take a DNA test would unravel secrets that had been carefully buried for nearly 3 decades. Secrets that would not only change her understanding of who she was, but would expose a web of lies that reached far beyond a simple adoption story. As she walked back into her father's hospital room, Elena looked at her with hopeful eyes. Are you okay, mija? Sarah forced a smile. I'm fine. We'll get through this as a family. But even as she said the words, Sarah knew that their definition of family was about to change forever. The DNA test kit would arrive at her apartment that evening, and with it, the first thread that would unravel everything she thought she knew about her life. Elena squeezed her hand, relief evident on her face. If only she knew that her daughter had already set in motion the very thing she feared most. The truth was coming, whether Elena was ready or not. In 6 to 8 weeks, Sarah would receive results that would make her question everything, not just about her adoption, but about the people who had raised her and the real reason they had been so desperate to keep her from learning about her biological family. The inheritance Sarah was about to discover wasn't money or property. It was something far more valuable and far more dangerous, the truth about who she really was, and the shocking reason why Elena and Carlos had been so determined to keep her from finding out. But for now, sitting in that hospital room, holding her adoptive mother's hand, while her adoptive father recovered from his heart attack, Sarah still believed that the biggest shock was behind her. She had no idea that learning about her adoption was just the beginning of a journey that would reveal secrets spanning decades and change not just her life, but the lives of everyone she thought she knew. The test kit would arrive in a small brown box, innocuous and simple. Sarah would swab her cheek, seal the sample in the provided tube, and mail it off without ceremony. Then she would wait, expecting to learn about her ethnic background and perhaps connect with some distant biological cousins. Instead, she would discover that her entire life had been built on a foundation of lies so complex and far-reaching that the truth would seem impossible to believe. The DNA results would be just the first piece of a puzzle that, once completed, would reveal why Elena and Carlos had been so desperate to adopt her, why they had worked so hard to erase her past, and why the truth about her biological family was worth killing to protect. But that revelation was still weeks away. For now, Sarah sat with the people she had always called her parents, trying to adjust to the simple truth that she was adopted, completely unaware that the real truth was far more shocking than anything she could imagine. 8 weeks later. Sarah was finally beginning to feel normal again. Her father had made a full recovery and was back to his tennis games, though Elena insisted he cut back to once a week. The adoption revelation had been difficult to process, but Sarah had gradually come to terms with it. Elena and Carlos were still her parents in every way that mattered, and their love for her had never been in question. The DNA test had become something of an afterthought. Sarah had almost forgotten about it entirely when the email notification appeared in her inbox on a busy Thursday morning. "Your Ancestry DNA results are ready." Sitting at her desk between client meetings, Sarah clicked the link with casual curiosity. She expected to see a breakdown of her ethnic background, maybe Irish, given her auburn hair, or Scandinavian for her blue eyes. What she found instead made her coffee mug slip from her hands, shattering on her office floor. The screen showed a family tree, but not the kind she had expected. At the top level, under close family matches, was a result that made no sense. Robert Kellerman, father, 99.9% match. Sarah stared at the screen, her heart pounding. That was impossible. Her biological father wasn't supposed to be findable. Elena had said he was completely out of the picture, that they had no information about him at all. With shaking fingers, Sarah clicked on Robert Kellerman's profile. The photo that loaded made her gasp audibly. She was looking at a man in his 50s with auburn hair and piercing blue eyes. Her hair, her eyes. But more shocking than the physical resemblance was what she read in his bio. Robert Kellerman, CEO of Kellerman Industries. Philanthropist. Father of 3 children, Michael, Jennifer, and... The profile stopped there, but Sarah could see partial information about other family members. Kellerman Industries. Sarah knew that name. It was one of Chicago's most successful real estate development companies, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She had seen Robert Kellerman's name in the society pages, had even attended charity events where he was the keynote speaker. Never once had she looked at him and seen any resemblance, but now that she knew, it was undeniable. But how was this possible? Elena and Carlos had claimed they knew nothing about her biological father. Had they lied? Or had they genuinely not known? And if Robert Kellerman was her father, why had her adoption been arranged in secret? Why hadn't he taken responsibility for his child? Sarah's hands were trembling as she scrolled down to see her other DNA matches. There were dozens of them. Cousins, half-siblings, relatives she had never known existed. But one name caught her attention. Jennifer Kellerman, half-sister, 25% match. Sarah clicked on Jennifer's profile and found a woman close to her own age, with dark hair, but the same distinctive eye shape. Jennifer worked as a pediatric surgeon at Children's Memorial Hospital. She was married with 2 young children, and according to her family tree, she was definitely Robert Kellerman's daughter. The implications hit Sarah like a wave. She wasn't just some random adopted child. She was the secret daughter of one of Chicago's most prominent businessmen. She had half-siblings she had never met. She potentially had a claim to a massive inheritance. But more importantly, she had been lied to for her entire life. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Dinner Sunday? Dad is making his famous paella." The normalcy of the message felt surreal given what Sarah had just discovered. How could she sit at the dinner table with the people who had raised her, knowing they had hidden such an enormous truth from her? Before she could lose her nerve, Sarah picked up her phone and called the main number for Kellerman Industries. "Kellerman Industries, how may I help you?" "I need to speak with Robert Kellerman, please. It's a personal matter. Mr. Kellerman is in meetings all day. Could I take a message?" Sarah hesitated. How did you tell someone's secretary that you might be their boss's secret daughter? "Could you tell him that Sarah Martinez called? Tell him it's about DNA results and that it's urgent. I'll pass along the message, but Mr. Kellerman's schedule is quite full. It may be several days before he can return your call." Sarah hung up, frustration building. She couldn't wait several days. She needed answers now. Instead of going back to work, Sarah grabbed her purse and headed for the elevator. Kellerman Industries was only 20 minutes away. She would wait in the lobby if she had to. The Kellerman Industries building was a gleaming tower in the loop, all glass and steel reaching toward the Chicago sky. Sarah had passed it hundreds of times, but never paid much attention. Now, looking up at it, she wondered if this building was part of her inheritance, if she even had one. The lobby was marble and chrome, with expensive art on the walls and a security desk that looked like it meant business. Sarah approached the receptionist, trying to project more confidence than she felt. "I'm here to see Robert Kellerman. I called earlier, Sarah Martinez." The receptionist, a polished woman in her 40s, looked Sarah up and down with barely concealed skepticism. "Mr. Kellerman doesn't see people without appointments. If you'd like to schedule something—" "Tell him it's about his daughter," Sarah interrupted, the words coming out louder than she intended. The receptionist's expression shifted from skepticism to alarm. "Excuse me? Please, just tell him Sarah Martinez is here about DNA results. Trust me, he'll want to see me." The receptionist picked up the phone and spoke in low, urgent tones. Sarah couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see the woman's expression growing more serious. After several minutes, she hung up. "Mr. Kellerman will see you. Take the elevator to the 40th floor. Someone will meet you there." The elevator ride felt endless. Sarah's reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman who looked nervous but determined. She had come too far to back down now. The 40th floor was even more impressive than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Lake Michigan, and the office spaces were filled with expensive furniture and more art than most museums. A woman in a sharp business suit was waiting when the elevator doors opened. "Ms. Martinez?" I'm Catherine Walsh, Mr. Kellerman's assistant. Please follow me. They walked down a long hallway lined with photographs of various real estate developments. Sarah recognized several Chicago landmarks that she now realized Kellerman Industries had built. The wealth on display was staggering. Catherine knocked on a door at the end of the hall, then opened it without waiting for a response. "Mr. Kellerman, Ms. Martinez is here." The office was enormous, with panoramic views of the city and furniture that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. Behind an imposing mahogany desk sat Robert Kellerman, and seeing him in person was like looking into a gender-swapped mirror. The resemblance was unmistakable. "Thank you, Catherine. Please close the door and hold my calls." Once they were alone, Robert Kellerman stood and walked around his desk, studying Sarah's face with an expression she couldn't read. "You're definitely Margaret's daughter," he said finally. "Margaret?" Sarah's voice came out as a whisper. "Your biological mother, Margaret O'Brien. You look just like her at your age, except for the eyes. Those you got from me." Sarah sank into one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "You knew about me?" Robert returned to his seat, suddenly looking much older than his 53 years. "I knew Margaret was pregnant. I knew she planned to give the baby up for adoption. What I didn't know was whether the child was mine." "But you didn't try to find out?" "I was 25 years old, Sarah. I was engaged to someone else, someone my family approved of. Margaret was—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Margaret was a complication I couldn't afford." The casual way he spoke about her mother, about her own existence as a complication, made Sarah's anger flare. "A complication? I don't expect you to understand. My family's business was at a critical point. A scandal would have destroyed everything we had built. So you just let her handle it alone?" "I gave her money," Robert said defensively. "A substantial amount. Enough to take care of everything and start over somewhere new." "And you never wondered what happened to your child?" For the first time, Robert's composed facade cracked slightly. "I told myself it was better not to know, that the child would be better off without me." Sarah stared at him, trying to reconcile the successful businessman in front of her with the young man who had abandoned his pregnant girlfriend and child. "What about now? Do you think I'm better off without you?" "I don't know," Robert said honestly. "My life is complicated, Sarah. I have a wife, children, responsibilities. I can't just acknowledge that I exist. It's not that simple." Sarah stood up, anger giving her courage. "It seems pretty simple to me. Either I'm your daughter or I'm not. The DNA test says I am." "The DNA test." Robert rubbed his temples. "How many people have access to those results?" "Just me, for now. But Robert, I have half-siblings I've never met. I have a family I never knew existed. You can't expect me to just pretend I never found out." "What do you want from me?" The question caught Sarah off guard. What did she want? Recognition? Money? A relationship? She hadn't thought that far ahead. "I want the truth," she said finally. "I want to know what really happened with my mother. I want to know why my adoptive parents told me they didn't know anything about my biological father when clearly someone knew exactly who you were." Robert was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the Chicago skyline. "The truth is dangerous, Sarah. There are things about your mother's disappearance—" "Disappearance?" Sarah interrupted. "What do you mean, disappearance?" Robert's face went pale. "I thought you knew. I thought that's why you were here." "Knew what?" "Margaret didn't just give you up for adoption and move away, Sarah. She disappeared. 3 days after she gave birth to you, she vanished. No one ever saw her again." The room seemed to spin around Sarah. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your mother didn't choose to give you up and walk away. Something happened to her. Something that someone wanted to keep hidden badly enough to make sure she could never tell anyone the truth." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Are you saying she was murdered? I'm saying she knew something that someone didn't want her to know. And 3 days after you were born, she was gone. The inheritance Sarah had discovered wasn't just money or family connections. It was a secret worth killing for, and now that she had uncovered the first piece of the puzzle, she was in the same danger that had claimed her mother nearly 3 decades ago. But Sarah didn't know the worst part yet. She didn't know that Elena and Carlos hadn't found her through a random adoption agency. They had been chosen specifically, paid handsomely, and instructed to make sure she never learned the truth about her biological family. And now that she had found Robert Kellerman, the people who had orchestrated her mother's disappearance were about to learn that their secret was no longer safe. The truth that Margaret O'Brien had died trying to protect was about to surface, and this time they wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatened to expose it, including the daughter Margaret had given her life to save. Sarah left Robert Kellerman's office with more questions than answers, but she was determined to find the truth about her mother's disappearance. Robert had given her what little information he had. Margaret O'Brien had been 22, worked as a waitress at a downtown restaurant, and had been asking questions about something in the days before she vanished. He claimed not to know what those questions were about, but Sarah could tell he was holding something back. That night, Sarah couldn't concentrate on anything except her mother's fate. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, searching for any information about Margaret O'Brien's disappearance in 1996. What she found was shocking. There was virtually nothing. No police reports, no missing person cases, no news articles. It was as if Margaret O'Brien had never existed. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to work and drove to the Chicago Police Department. She needed to file a request for any records related to her mother's case, but what she discovered there made her blood run cold. Detective Ray Morrison had been working missing persons for over 30 years. When Sarah explained what she was looking for, his expression grew grim. "Margaret O'Brien," he repeated, typing the name into his computer. "You said 1996? Yes. She disappeared 3 days after giving birth to me. There has to be some record." "There is a record," Detective Morrison said slowly, "but it's not what you're expecting." He turned his computer screen towards Sarah. The file was brief but devastating. "Margaret O'Brien, case closed, death by suicide, body not recovered, Lake Michigan, April 15, 1996. Sarah stared at the screen in disbelief. Suicide? But that's not... Robert Kellerman said she disappeared. He never mentioned suicide. According to this report, Ms. O'Brien left a note saying she couldn't handle giving up her baby and decided to end her life. Her car was found abandoned near Navy Pier with the note inside. The case was closed after a week when no body was found. Who reported her missing? Detective Morrison scrolled through the file. Says here it was her landlord when she didn't pay rent. But that's strange. What's strange? The timeline. She supposedly committed suicide on April 15th, but according to this, she had already arranged the adoption and the baby had been placed with the adoptive family. Why would she kill herself 3 days after successfully completing the adoption process? Sarah's mind was racing. Can I see the original report? The suicide note? I can request the physical file, but it might take a few days. These old cases are stored off-site. Sarah gave him her contact information and left the police station feeling more confused than ever. If her mother had committed suicide, why had Robert Kellerman implied she had been murdered? Unless he didn't know about the official cause of death, or unless the suicide was staged. Her phone rang as she was walking to her car. The number was unfamiliar. Sarah Martinez? Yes. This is Jennifer Kellerman. I saw your DNA match on Ancestry DNA. I think we need to talk. Sarah's heart skipped a beat, her half-sister. Yes, I'd like that very much. Can you meet me tonight? Somewhere private. There are things you need to know about our father, things that might explain why your mother disappeared. They arranged to meet at a small cafe in Lincoln Park. Sarah arrived early and chose a table in the back corner where they wouldn't be overheard. When Jennifer walked in, the family resemblance was unmistakable despite their different coloring. She was tall and elegant, with the same bone structure and those distinctive Kellerman eyes. "You look just like him," Jennifer said as she sat down. "It's unsettling." "You're a doctor?" "Pediatric surgeon." "And you're a lawyer, according to your LinkedIn profile." Jennifer smiled grimly. "He has a type, apparently. Successful, intelligent women." "What do you mean?" Jennifer glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. "My father has a pattern, Sarah. He has affairs, and when those affairs become inconvenient, the women tend to disappear." Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. "Disappear how?" "My mother, his wife, found out about Margaret O'Brien. She hired a private investigator to follow them to get evidence for a divorce. But then Margaret suddenly committed suicide, and all the evidence vanished with her." "Are you saying your father had her killed?" "I'm saying my father has resources, and he's used them before to protect his reputation and his business interests." Jennifer leaned forward. "Sarah, there have been 3 other women over the years. All of them ended up dead under suspicious circumstances." Sarah's hands were shaking as she reached for her coffee. "How do you know all this?" "Because I've been investigating it for years, ever since I found some of my mother's old files in our attic. She never got over the guilt of what happened to Margaret." "Your mother is still alive?" "No. She died 5 years ago. Cancer. But before she died, she told me everything. About the private investigator, about the other women, about the money that changes hands to make problems go away." Sarah thought about Elena and Carlos, about the complicated private adoption they had always described. "Jennifer, do you know anything about my adoptive parents? Elena and Carlos Martinez?" Jennifer's expression darkened. "I know they were paid a lot of money to take you and to never ask questions about your background." The betrayal hit Sarah like a physical blow. "They were paid?" $500,000 according to my mother's records, plus ongoing payments for your education and upbringing. They weren't just loving parents who wanted to adopt, Sarah. They were hired to hide you." Sarah felt sick. Everything she had believed about her life, about her parents' love for her, was crumbling. Why? Why was it so important to hide me?" "Because Margaret O'Brien wasn't just some waitress having an affair with a married man. She was an investigative journalist working undercover. She had discovered something about Kellerman Industries that could have brought down the entire company." "What kind of something?" Jennifer pulled a manila folder from her purse. "Money laundering, connections to organized crime, bribes to city officials for construction contracts. Margaret had documented evidence of all of it, evidence that disappeared with her." Sarah opened the folder and found photocopied pages of what looked like financial records, meeting notes, and photographs of her father with men she didn't recognize. But what caught her attention was a letter in her mother's handwriting. "If something happens to me," the letter read, "please make sure my daughter knows the truth. The evidence is hidden where only she can find it. Her inheritance isn't money. It's justice." "She left evidence?" Sarah whispered. "Somewhere. My mother spent years trying to find it, but Margaret was too smart. She hid it somewhere that only you would be able to discover." Sarah stared at the letter, her mind working. "She mentions an inheritance, not money, but something else." "Justice," Jennifer said. "The evidence to bring down our father and everyone he's been working with. But how am I supposed to find something that's been hidden for almost 30 years? "I don't know. But Sarah, you have to be careful. Now that you've contacted our father, now that you know the truth, you're in the same danger Margaret was in." As if on cue, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Where are you, mija? We're worried. Please call." Sarah showed the message to Jennifer. "How much do you think they know?" "Everything. They've been watching you your whole life, making sure you never got curious about your biological family. When you took that DNA test, they probably panicked." Sarah's phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen. "Don't answer it," Jennifer warned. "At least not until we figure out what to do next." But Sarah was already answering. "Hi, Mom." "Sarah, thank God. We need to talk to you. It's important. Can you come home tonight?" "What's this about?" "Just come home, please. Your father and we have some things we need to explain." Sarah looked at Jennifer, who was shaking her head frantically. "I'm actually busy tonight, Mom. Can we talk tomorrow?" "Sarah, this can't wait, please. We love you and we need you to come home." There was something in Elena's voice, desperation, fear, that made Sarah's decision for her. "Okay, I'll be there in an hour." She hung up and turned to Jennifer. "I have to go. They know something's wrong." "Sarah, don't. If they're part of this, if they've been lying to you your whole life, going there alone could be dangerous." "They raised me, Jennifer. Whatever else they've done, they love me. I need to hear their side of the story." Jennifer grabbed Sarah's hand. "Then let me come with you. Or at least take this." She handed Sarah a small recording device. "If something happens, if they admit to anything, we need evidence." Sarah took the device and slipped it into her pocket. "If I don't call you by midnight, call the police." "Sarah, I have to do this. I need to know the truth." As Sarah drove to her childhood home in Riverside, she thought about the letter her mother had left. The evidence is hidden where only she can find it. Where would a young woman hide something that only her infant daughter would be able to find years later? The answer came to her just as she pulled into her parents' driveway, the one place that had always been hers alone, the one thing that Elena and Carlos had never questioned or interfered with: her bedroom. Her mother had somehow hidden the evidence in the room that would become Sarah's bedroom. But how had Margaret known which family would adopt her daughter? Unless the adoption hadn't been as random as Elena and Carlos had claimed. Unless Margaret had chosen the Martinez family specifically because she knew their house, knew the room that would become Sarah's. Sarah sat in her car for a moment, looking at the modest two-story house where she had grown up. Somewhere in that house was evidence that could bring down one of Chicago's most powerful men and expose a conspiracy that had cost her mother her life. The front door opened, and Elena appeared, silhouetted against the warm light from inside. She looked older, more fragile than Sarah had ever seen her. "Mija, come inside. We have so much to explain." Sarah got out of the car, her hand touching the recording device in her pocket. Whatever Elena and Carlos were about to tell her would either clear up the mystery or confirm Jennifer's worst suspicions. But as Sarah walked toward the house, she didn't notice the black sedan parked at the end of the street, or the man inside speaking quietly into a phone. "She's here. Should we proceed?" The evidence Margaret O'Brien had died to protect was about to be found, and the people who had kept it hidden for 30 years were running out of options. Sarah was walking into the most dangerous night of her life, completely unaware that Elena and Carlos might not be the only ones waiting for her inside. The truth about her mother's inheritance was finally within reach, but claiming it might cost Sarah everything, including her life.